Live from Washington, D.C., this is Balance of Power with Joe Mathieu and Kailey Leinz.
The House votes on more money for the Pentagon as the president threatens escalation. Welcome to the Wednesday edition as President Trump attends the dignified transfer of soldiers killed last weekend in service to their country, while Congress considers a supplemental budget request that they're going to be voting on for billions more today. I'm Joe Mathieu alongside Kailey Leinz here in Washington. Kailey, the president on Truth Social, threatening to bomb a bridge or a power plant for every boat that Iran shoots at.
Yeah, even those close to or in the capital city of Tehran, to use the words of the president. So once again, threatening escalation at a time where, of course, the escalation we already have seen to this point has lost more American lives, with the death toll climbing, and the president just moments ago receiving the bodies of those fallen service members. All of that is what points to more political difficulty. The longer that this war continues to go on, the harder it may be for those here at home who have to stand for re-election in November. And that's why this vote on a budget blueprint that paves the way for a third reconciliation package that provides more funding for the Pentagon is so sensitive and is likely to be Republican only in terms of voting yes.
They're going to be getting to this, it looks like, a couple of hours from now, in the 3 o'clock hour voting, at least the process of voting on a number of issues will begin. But you're right, Kailey, there are no offsets here. This is deficit spending, whether we're talking about the supplemental or the $1.5 trillion dollars that'll be debated for the annual Pentagon expenditure. And we're going to be spending some time with a budget hawk, and very curious to hear what Congressman Chip Roy thinks. The Republican from Texas will be joining us. I think safe to say someone who supports this effort, but not the idea of spending without offsets.
He also supports the notion of a ban on members of Congress trading stocks. That is also one of the votes that will be happening this afternoon, although he might want this particular package that is on the floor today to go a bit farther, but we'll speak with him about that. And of course, as we consider those trading stocks, if it's not members of Congress, there's plenty of people on Wall Street doing it. And right now it's a bit of a mixed day in terms of where they're buying and selling. So for the latest, we turn to Charlie Pellet with a check on the markets from New York. Hey, Charlie.
Hi, thank you very much, Kailey. Indeed, all about Alphabet, all about Tesla. They report after the closing bell. And of course, we're going to be all over those numbers as they cross the Bloomberg. Right now, as you mentioned, mixed market. We've got NASDAQ 100 index just turning positive, barely up by a point right now. NASDAQ Composite Index does remain lower, down by 10 points. That is a drop of under 0.1%. S&P keeping it all in context. Little changed, up by about 0.2% now. Higher by 15 points, just about the best level of the day on the S&P. The Dow up 170 now. That is a gain of 0.3%. And to be sure, both NASDAQ and the NASDAQ 100 index now lower and little changed. The stocks, the Philadelphia Stock Exchange Semiconductor Index up now by 1.2%, a 10-year at 4.64%, the 2-year 4.29%, and the 30-year at 5.13%. Gold, meanwhile, up 1.7% to $41.45 the ounce, while West Texas Intermediate crude oil, $86.49 a barrel. WTI up 2.5%. Brent was trading above 95, currently at 93.56. Barrel of Brent crude up by about 2.8%. Oil prices jumping on the escalation of the U.S.-Iran war. After the closing bell, again, we will be hearing from Alphabet. Shares higher now by 0.2%. Tesla also after the bell down by 0.3%. For the first time in 10 years, the United Nations is set for a leadership change. Join us tomorrow at 5 p.m. Eastern for special coverage of a UN town hall to hear candidates for the next UN Secretary General debate. We'll have it for you live from UN headquarters, the UN Town Hall, 5 o'clock Wall Street time, right here on Bloomberg. I'm Charlie Pellet. Back we go to Washington. Once again, Joe Mathieu and Kailey Leinz.
All right, Charlie Pellet checking on the markets for us from New York. Thank you so much. President Trump, of course, is not here in Washington at the moment. He's actually en route now to Georgia. Well, he will be speaking at a high school later this afternoon, having attended earlier the dignified transfer of 3 fallen service members who died this past weekend in the Middle East amid the ongoing conflict with Iran at Dover Air Force Base in Delaware. Even as he was making his way there, of course, the president has been weighing in on the escalating nature of this conflict with Iran on Truth Social, threatening to essentially go tit for tat if Iran were to try to attack ships in the Strait of Hormuz. He says the U.S. will go after a bridge or a power plant, bomb or destroy them. Essentially saying that this war will go further. And the president suggested that the American people may not be against the war itself, even if they don't like the prices that they are seeing at the pump.
Americans aren't against the war. A poll just came out. Americans don't want high gasoline prices, but they're not against the war. That just came out loud and clear in a poll. Nobody wants Iran to have a nuclear weapon.
Let's get to Tyler Kendall, Bloomberg's Washington correspondent, ahead of our conversation with Congressman Chip Roy. She's on the north lawn of the White House right now as the president makes his way from Dover to Georgia. And Tyler, you heard, of course, Kailey reference the president's post on Truth Social. Will he be escalating, as they say, to de-escalate once again?
Well, Joe, at this point, despite efforts by mediators to try to avoid further escalation, the tensions appear pointed there as the U.S. expands the scopes of its targets. You had this post that you guys were talking about from President Trump saying that the U.S. will go after either a bridge or a power plant in exchange for every commercial vessel that Iran targets in the Strait of Hormuz, as we have gotten very little indication that Iran is willing to let up its leverage when it comes to disrupting global oil flows. In fact, President Trump, as you well know, yesterday said that Iran desperately wants to make a deal, but that the U.S. isn't even interested in coming to the negotiating table unless Iran does in what he called a meaningful way. But we heard from one of Iran's top negotiators earlier today, seeming to downplay reports that there was this meeting yesterday in Pakistan, instead saying that there are not negotiations, just messages being exchanged between the two sides. And Joe and Kailey, as you well know, the disruptions extend beyond the Strait of Hormuz, which is just adding to the urgency of the moment. We got new satellite imagery overnight appearing to show that at least 2 tankers loaded up with Saudi crude made U-turns as they headed toward the Red Sea, seeming to indicate that that threat from the Iranian-backed proxy group, the Houthis, to institute a maritime blockade is already working.
All right, Bloomberg's Tyler Kendall live on the north lawn of the White House. Thank you so much. And for more on this, we go now to the other end of Pennsylvania Avenue, live on Capitol Hill, where we're joined by Republican Congressman Chip Roy of Texas, who is joining us live now on Bloomberg TV and radio. Congressman, welcome back. It's great to have you on Balance of Power. As we consider this ongoing war, and we want to get to other matters before you and your colleagues in the House today as well, but given the escalating nature, we are seeing the Defense Secretary having testified yesterday that it's already cost $37.5 billion, with the Pentagon obviously asking for billions more than that in this supplemental request that's going through the reconciliation process. For how long can Congress continue to authorize funding without offsets for this war to continue to be prosecuted?
Well, great to be on. Obviously, we're trying to move forward this week to get a reconciliation package done, frankly, because we have no real partners with our Democrat colleagues to figure out how to move things through. We had to do it to fund ICE and Border Patrol. Now we're trying to figure out how to make sure our military has the resources it needs, as well as ensuring we can get the SAVE Act through the Senate so we can protect our elections. But to your point, I am a fiscal hawk. I am concerned about spending, and I am concerned the extent to which this is not being paid for, and that we need to have a full-throated debate here in the halls of Congress about the war. I happen to be one who supports Israel, supports our national security interests, and wants to check Iran and make sure that we're stopping Iran from gaining, whether it's conventional or nuclear capabilities. But we need to make sure we have a full-throated support by Congress, or we shouldn't be doing it. And we haven't had that debate fully. And I think that's a part of the discussions today on the NDAA, the National Defense Authorization Act, as well as the reconciliation package. We're going to want to move forward this week to get that budget process step forward. I think that will pass, but we're going to have to continue to debate whether we're going to get a full SAVE Act and whether we're going to have anything that I'm demanding, which is in any future negotiations on a 4th reconciliation package, that we pay for the $90 billion of this that is unpaid for. We cannot keep racking up debt, and we need to have a conversation about the war.
Well, we hear you, Congressman. I'm just curious if you could act as our reporter here, the extent that you're hearing a vote count. Will this budget resolution pass? Does the Speaker have the votes? We'll ask you about the CR as well, because obviously you've got $67 billion, I believe, here for the Pentagon, and what many say is badly needed on the other side of the river.
Yeah, for sure. I do believe the Pentagon needs additional funding, and I'm happy to try to provide that and support it. But I do want to make sure we're paying for it. All right, there ain't no free lunch, and too many people in this town think there is. I do think that the first step of the reconciliation process, the budget, will move forward this week. That's my bet. We'll see. We still have some votes that we're working on the floor. We need to move forward to try to get the SAVE Act done, and we do need to try to support our military while we're engaged. But I think the NDAA might be in trouble. And I think that's in part because we haven't had the full-throated conversation on the war that we need to have and have a unified approach to how we're going to make sure our military is strong as it needs to be, not just to deal with Iran, but to deal with China, a real threat on the horizon. We need to make sure that we have a transformation of our military for generations to come so that we are still the global superpower and we can defend our country and our interests. Right now, we got to get through this step this week. But my message has got to be clear. We got to pay for this stuff, and we need to have Congress in the conversation on war. That's what the Constitution contemplates. That's what it says, and we need to be a part of that.
Well, if there's no guarantee, Congressman, that there will be a fourth reconciliation package that may include pay-fors for this one, why vote for it without the pay-fors now, today?
Yeah, I'm not a fan, as you know, of voting for anything that's unpaid for. Right now, I am being a team player to move something through this week so that we can try to get the Save America Act passed through a recalcitrant Senate and against Democrats who refuse to work with us. But I am being very clear that we've got to pay for it in our future conversations. And by the way, we have multiple steps to go on this one. I need to know that the Save America Act is real. I need to know that we have a real plan on how we're dealing with the war. I need to know that we're going to be serious about paying for this $90 billion in the next phase. You're right. We may not get a fourth reconciliation, but I'm willing to roll the dice this week, as of right now, based on the information in front of me, to try to give us a shot to secure American elections and get the Save America passed and try to backfill our munitions that our military needs, because our men and women in uniform deserve to have the tools to carry out their job when they're being asked to do it. But Congress is going to have to work with the president to make sure we've got a real plan for our military going forward. This is all complicated stuff. The Constitution requires separation of powers. Congress has to have a voice. But our men and women in uniform deserve the tools to do their job. So I'm trying to balance those interests and send the messages that need to be sent both to the White House and to my Democratic colleagues that we need to have adults sit down and get this done the right way.
Well, I'm sure that you're sending that message to the Speaker. And Congressman, I appreciate the fact that we can acknowledge that this is complex stuff. There are a lot of nuances here that are difficult to put on a bumper sticker. I'd like to bring our audience to your Stock Trading Act, your Restore Trust in Congress Act. This is a big issue. The House plans to vote on the Stop Insider Trading Act, which does not require divestment. Yours does. Can both pass?
Well, thanks for the question. First of all, thanks for you all getting the facts right. I do a lot of interviews where people get it all confused. You laid it out beautifully. That's exactly right. 6 years ago, I worked on a bipartisan basis to try to move forward and say we should ban all congressional stock trading, including divestiture, like you said. We worked out a deal to get Republicans united, or at least close to united, behind a deal that's going to say you can't buy equities, but you can maintain the equities you come in with. But you'll have to have the kind of transparency that we require of the executives, the CEOs and so forth, of publicly traded companies under the SEC rules. So I think that's a giant step forward. If you think about it, to say that members of Congress cannot purchase any equities, that would be a big deal. So I'll support it, however. I always have a however. My problem is they added the SAVE Act, of which I'm the author and I support loudly, to the stock trading bill. Now, the purpose of that is to make it partisan. The purpose of that is to score political points. I don't like that way of doing things. Like, look, I'm happy we're in an election. You got to go win the election. But I want to have a straight up or down vote on stock trading. I want everybody to have to go in front of the American people on a one subject bill and tell them what they think is right. And if they want to amend it, offer an amendment. If they don't, then vote up or down. That's what I think we ought to do. But at least we're getting a vote today for the first time, to which I'm aware, on this issue. And I've been trying for 6 years to get it. So I'll take this as a step forward. Hopefully we will see it pass, but then we're going to need to get a straight up or down vote on it pretty soon if I can have anything to do with it.
Okay, so one step forward. Would another step forward for this to extend beyond the legislative branch? Should this reach the White House too? Why should the president or those working on his behalf be able to trade stocks?
Yeah, I agree. It should apply to the entirety of the federal government across all branches. Separation of powers also means that we should all kind of treat ourselves the same way in terms of both transparency and the rules by which we operate. So it should apply to the president on down in the executive branch, everybody in the legislative branch, and all judges, including the Supreme Court. This bill obviously is targeted to Congress. Again, baby steps in the sausage-making legislative process. If we get our house in order in Congress, then I think we can then point the finger at the courts and the executive branch and make them adhere to the same rules. That would be my goal and my preference, and I'm not going to stop fighting for it. Today is a giant step forward. Again, I think Congress is poised today to state that members of Congress should not be buying equities. That's a very powerful statement to say that and by the way, that's not insider trading. If you have insider trading, you can go get convicted of that right now. It's about trust. It's about believing that your members of Congress are actually making decisions in their committees and on the floor that are in their interest, the people's interest, not the interest of their financial interests, right? So if you're voting on health care, you're doing it for the people. You're not doing it because you own stock in an insurance company or a pharma company, right? If you're voting on defense, you're not doing it because you own Palantir or Lockheed. You're doing it for the people. That's what I think is important.
It's wild for people who are not in Washington circles to hear this conversation, Congressman, and why it took so long for this to be addressed. I don't know if this passes, if that'll be the end of the Nance ETF. Maybe that's a separate issue. But I do wonder, from your view, why it's taken so long. Are there members you talk to in the cloakroom who say, hey, Chip, I'm sorry, I'm trading Intel this weekend. You don't have my vote. Who wants to keep trading?
Well, look, I don't want to talk about private conversations I have with people, but I'll tell you broadly, there are two forces at play. One, you've got people who they just want to trade because they want more money. I'm just going to be blunt. And number two, you've got people who believe they've got the right to do it, right? That as a member, as a citizen, they have the right to trade stocks, that we can't limit that. I disagree. It is a privilege to serve in the United States Congress. We limit salary. We limit what you can do in terms of being employed at the same time. And there's a lot of conflicts there. People own car dealerships, people own farms. I get it. But we need to start cabining that in so that people can trust Congress again to be here for their interests. By the way, especially when you don't have term limits, especially when people are here endlessly. You should come here for 2 or 3 or 4 terms, and if that's no longer good for you personally, then go home. But it's a sacrifice. It's supposed to be a sacrifice. So that's my message to my colleagues. Suck it up, Gus. You get to be a member of the United States Congress. Let's go do this so that people can believe in us again.
Well, and you are a member of the United States Congress. You are a member of the Budget Committee. So just finally on Reconciliation 4.0, which I know you want to include pay-fors for what is going through the process now, but what else would be on your wish list for an unprecedented 4th budget reconciliation package in one Congress?
Yeah, look, if we're able to get to a 4th reconciliation package, whether it's before Election Day or in a lame duck or next year, I think we need to make sure our military is transformed to beat China and to make sure we're the global superpower. I think we need to restore healthcare freedom for the American people with fully empowered health savings accounts that allow us to have the doctor-patient relationship restored so you're not dependent on insurance companies and bureaucrats and government bureaucrats telling you what to do. Thirdly, I think we need to have actual deficit reduction. Not made up nonsense, not 10th year spending, not stuff you hope to get. Oh, trust me, we'll get the fraud stuff coming in. I want straight up mathematical deficit reduction, a strong defense, healthcare freedom. We can do some other things in there, but those are my big 3. And it's got to be actual deficit reduction. $40 trillion in debt. We're spending more on interest every year than we do defending our country. Our kids and grandkids depend on us getting this done right. Reconciliation, we're having to use it for things like Border Patrol, ICE, and now trying to deal with the SAVE Act. I get it. It's a weird political climate, and we got to go win. But we need to do our job, reduce deficits, and that's really, at the end of the day, what reconciliation is for, is to deal with debt, deficits, and spending. So making sure we're reducing spending. So that's my goal.
I just sense freedom. I feel freedom when you're talking, Congressman, in your last months in Congress, and I hope that we can stay in touch for the rest of this one. Thank you for being with us for an honest conversation today about a wild day on Capitol Hill. Great to see you as well. Congressman Chip Roy, the Republican from Texas, as we now assemble our political panel for their take on everything we just heard. A revealing conversation you're not going to hear anywhere else. And we have Bloomberg Politics contributor, Republican strategist Rick Davis with us, partner at Stonecourt Capital, joined by Laura Fink, Democratic strategist, founder, CEO of Rebelle Communications. Rick, we heard a lot from Congressman Chip Roy there. Does this CR, based on what you heard, passed as reconciliation, maybe more importantly, passed with Pentagon money on board?
Yeah, I think it's really hard to reconcile that conversation because at one side he says, oh, I'm just all about reducing the debt and the deficits. And at the same time, I'm going to pass through this, just under $100 billion with no offsets. but we can get to it later sometime if there is an opportunity to get to it later. I mean, we've already added almost $4 trillion to the deficit since the president took office. And these guys keep making promises like Chip Roy does. I love everything he says. I just hate that they don't do any of it. And so I really think there's a reckoning coming, and people can't look in the mirror and make the argument that they're a deficit hawk when they say yes to all these big spending bills.
Well, he says he is willing to take the risk or roll the dice, he said, on this go around. And I guess we'll have to see what happens there and if he ultimately is going to get the pay force he wants, Laura. But he also clearly really wants to see some forward progress in Congress on banning the trading of individual stocks. We've been talking about this for years now. Is now actually the moment at which you think it happens?
No, I don't think so. And I want to say 100% I agree with him on this, and it should get done. And you heard him say he wanted a standalone bill. Like, that's the least likely way it's going to pass, if it passes at all. So I think this is, I understand why this is his pet project as he exits Congress, and that makes a lot of sense. But you also heard him say that he's dying on the hill of the Save America Act, the bring your passport and your birth certificate to register to vote act. And I think that he's tying this $90 billion to that. So I'm roiling with the say one thing and do another. I mean, this is a congressman who voted for the big, beautiful bill, which added significant amounts of, I don't have the estimates right now, but I feel like we're like billions and billions, if not $1 trillion, to the deficit. So to me, it sort of rings hollow when, and to be fair to Chip Roy, this is endemic and it's just a problem with this Republican Congress, arguably the weakest Congress we have seen in generations in terms of standing up, checking the president, using the congressional power and oversight power to stand up for the beliefs that he was saying he held so firmly. So I'm really challenged with all of the things that he is wanting to do as he moves forward, because right now is the time, as you exit, is when you can take those risks because you're not on the ballot.
Indeed. There's a YOLO caucus in the House, too. It's not just in the Senate. Laura Fink and Rick Davis, our political panel today, will be sticking with us. We're going to have more ahead of them from them in just a moment, as we're also going to head back to the Capitol Hill. We'll be joined by Democratic Congressman Brittany Pettersen of Colorado. Will be joining us just ahead. First, though, we got to get a check on the markets and where we stand on this Wednesday trading day as we turn back to Charlie Pellet up in New York. Hey, Charlie.
Hi, thank you very much, Kailey. I'm going to call this a holding pattern. We are awaiting the latest numbers out of both Alphabet and also Tesla. We'll have those for you after the close of trading. Right now, little change. Perhaps the key takeaway is oil prices surge. S&P up 0.1%. Dow Industrials up 0.2%. Both NASDAQ and the NASDAQ 100 index, they're trading lower. Right now, NASDAQ down 0.2%. NASDAQ 100 index down 0.1%. 10-year 4.65%. Gold up 1.6%. 41.44 the ounce. A surge in West Texas Intermediate crude 3% higher, 86.86 a barrel. Brent up by 3.4%, back at 94.09 a barrel. For the first time in 10 years, the United Nations is set for a leadership change. Join us tomorrow, 5 o'clock Wall Street time, for special coverage of a UN town hall to hear candidates for the next UN Secretary General. We'll have it for you live on Bloomberg. Recapping S&P up 0.1%. Joe and Kailey, that is a Bloomberg Business Flash.
All right, Charlie Pellet, thank you very much indeed. Checking on the markets as we continue to check on Capitol Hill and the progress that is being made today, which, by the way, could be the last day in session for the House of Representatives for 5 weeks, because they're supposed to leave for the August recess tomorrow. But if they get enough done this afternoon in a series of votes that we're going to see, rumor is the speaker could actually send them home a little early.
That would be impressive, because none of these votes have been coming easily, as I think we just animated with Chip Roy. We're talking about votes starting around 3:30, unless that's moved. Maybe you can tell me otherwise if you were in the newsroom more recently than I. We've got the NDAA on the table. We've got the budget resolution for Reconciliation 3.0 that everyone's wringing their hands over. And we've got the stock trading ban in Congress that no one's been able to pass for years. So, well, this ought to go easily. And it's where we start our conversation with Brittany Pettersen, the Democratic Congresswoman, Colorado's 7th District, a member of the House Financial Services Committee on this day that the Clarity text is released. We've got a lot to talk about with the Congresswoman. Welcome to Bloomberg TV and Radio. It's great to have you after what we just heard from Congressman Chip Roy, who was pointing to Democrats as the reason why Republicans have to use reconciliation in this case to give the Pentagon more money, as Pete Hegseth, the Secretary of Defense, says is needed. Should I assume that it's whether it's NDAA or reconciliation that you're a no vote?
I'm absolutely a no vote. This is an illegal war, and it is, you were just talking about the increase in oil prices. This is hitting Americans at the grocery store, every basic essential, the costs are skyrocketing. So this is not a war that we voted for through Congress. This is a war that Donald Trump pulled us into, and I am absolutely a no vote.
Are you also a no vote on the continuing resolution to fund the government through December?
So I voted no because unfortunately there was a backdoor way that they were going to fund ICE's illegal operations. I believe that we need to have a functioning government, that we shouldn't be holding these critical services hostage. And unfortunately, it's a really cynical attempt. This is going to end in December. So after the election, hopefully we will have the House as Democrats and have some leverage in negotiating. But this is kicking the can down the road, and it's ultimately a budget cut because this is from the previous year funding levels.
What if that means a government shutdown lasting until the election? Is that a prospect that voters should prepare for?
I think that, I come from the state legislature where we always work together in a bipartisan way. None of us were 100% happy by the time our budgets came out. And ultimately, we would vote to move forward a package that is reflective of the people that we are representing in our priorities. I think what's so frustrating to see this time and time again, over and over, is just the chaos and dysfunction and unwillingness they never learned the lesson. By the way, Speaker Johnson, they were supposedly going to fix this backdoor loophole. Democrats were willing to come to the table on addressing this issue with the language that they had. They fundamentally didn't want us to come to the table because they didn't choose to address it. They moved forward as it is, so we'll see if the Senate actually gets it done. But this constant chaos, government shutdown, this is not what our country deserves. We deserve so much better.
Well, we're also wondering if the Senate's going to get something else done before the recess, and that is passing potentially a Clarity Act that, of course, has been revised from the one that the House already passed to include now an ethics provision. And I'm not sure, Congresswoman, I know you sit on the Financial Services Committee. I don't know if you've had a chance to read through this more than 600-page Senate bill that was released earlier this afternoon. But in the ethics portion, a few key takeaways from my glance through it. This would cover all elected officials and spouses. They wouldn't be able to issue their own digital assets or sponsor digital assets, though the whole thing seems to sunset on Inauguration Day in 2029. And it's the DOJ that ultimately would be in charge with enforcing this. Would it be enough to get your vote in the House if it can get through the Senate?
Look, Donald Trump has been very clear with Republicans that this is going to go after the ways in which he is exploiting our country and our interests to enrich himself and his family, that he would veto this bill. So you can guarantee that this doesn't actually close the loopholes that exist right now. It's truly unprecedented when you think about a current president profiting over billions of dollars from his cryptocurrency and the stock trading that he continues to do while pretending to support stock trading bans. I think that I really appreciate the Republicans who have continued to try to work through this, but in private conversations, the president has been very clear that anything that gets in his way, he will not sign, which is, the American people should absolutely know.
So can this not pass the House?
So we'll see. I mean, I know that issue, it's a top priority and something that we're trying to get done. The other pieces that are so important is making sure that we're regulating our digital assets and that we're providing a framework so we're not losing, the investments and the opportunities in this country, and that we're protecting consumers here. That means we have to do it in the right way. So to your point, I haven't read the 600-page piece of legislation that was just introduced, but we'll definitely be following this closely. We have a bipartisan coalition that's trying to work on threading the needle to protect people here in the United States, and provide a pathway for businesses to thrive here.
Congresswoman, as we consider what ultimately will make things and people, businesses thrive, you mentioned earlier the costs that are around the war with Iran that have fueled energy costs and inflation here at home. Should we expect anything more bipartisan to be done in Congress to address the affordability challenge ahead of the midterms? Is there time for that, something like the bipartisan housing bill that was able to pass earlier this month, or have we seen all legislatively that we can expect to see?
We should be working on this every day. What the American people are facing because of these failed policies is absolutely unacceptable. People are in pain, and you're seeing this. This is why the Republicans, President Trump is trying to shove his Save America Act through the process to ensure that voters don't actually have their votes counted. They know that people are incredibly unhappy. They are feeling the pain from the healthcare crisis that they've created, the skyrocketing costs because of Trump's illegal war, and the tariffs that hit our small businesses on an average of $25,000 a month of unexpected costs. So when you think about the ramifications that this has, this is where we should be focused. And you brought up the housing bill. No thanks to the president, that became law. It doesn't make me feel hopeful. Anything that is not about something that is going to benefit Donald Trump, he doesn't care. As he said, he doesn't get so.
All right, that's quite a way to end it. I don't know that he ever did say that, but Congresswoman, thank you for being with us.
About housing.
Brittany Pettersen, Democrat from Colorado. All right, thank you. Can't talk like that on TV or radio here on Bloomberg.
Yeah. The Congressman from Colorado, thank you for joining us as we turn back now to our political panel. Rick Davis and Laura Fink are back with us. Guys, no expletives, please. I think we've probably just hit our quota for the day. But Laura, I'd love to get your take on what we were just hearing from the Congresswoman around the idea of affordability and what else is going to be able to be done in this Congress. If it doesn't even seem clear that we're going to be able to fund the government after the end of the fiscal year before the midterms, should we essentially assume that we're not going to get anything else much? The train is leaving the station.
Agenda, and it is no more and no less than that. And right now he is laser focused on the Save America Act, which would potentially disenfranchise 21 million Americans by requiring them to have a passport or a birth certificate in order to register to vote, and also make it really hard for women who might have changed their names, say by getting married. So this is the focus and not anything related to affordability. You heard the Congresswoman talking about him dragging his feet on housing. And so I don't really see that any of the leadership in the Senate or the House on the Republican side is going to go against the president by trying to bring something else into the conversation, much less contend with the increases in the lack of affordability. I mean, these ghost tariffs, these zombie tariffs that are coming back that the Supreme Court tried to strike down, Trump is so wedded to them. And we know that raises the costs for businesses that they pass on to the consumers. And that means it's going to cost more for just about everything you buy. I don't fundamentally understand why the president is so committed to raising prices for Americans between wars and tariffs, but it seems to be his sole agenda.
Rick, what do you think of what Democrats are getting into here, using defense spending and even the NDAA itself, an authorization bill as a proxy for the war in Iran? These votes, I presume, will be held against them in campaign ads in the midterms. Will they work?
Yeah, there's got to be a cost to taking a bill, the NDAA, for instance, that has historically been nonpartisan and for the public good and for our national security, and turning it into a political football. This is a really, really bad development. It shouldn't be able to last. And I think people who vote against it for, regardless of what reasons they have, they've had a chance to amend. It'll go through the legislative process. This is one of those things that is regular order. And the idea that we're going to make it into a political football strikes at the heart of our national security.
And yet a political football, it seems to be, and we may get more evidence of that in the vote this afternoon.
Yeah, it's really something, Kailey. They're going to be voting at 3:30 on, I guess it's going to be one vote for all of these, NDAA, reconciliation, CR. So we'll have some news on this. And thanks to our panel, Rick Davis, partner at Stonecourt Capital, Bloomberg Politics contributor, and Laura Fink, founder CEO of Rebelle Communications. Everybody's worked up in Washington today.
Yeah, well, and maybe in Europe too, as we just got some breaking news that just crossed the Bloomberg terminal. We were waiting for this, and it wasn't necessarily unexpected, but the EU, the European Commission, has just okayed Paramount's $110 billion acquisition of Warner Brothers Discovery. It has gotten the conditional nod. This was supposed to pave the way for the deal to close as soon as this week. Yet it will not, because, of course, here in the U.S., you had a lawsuit brought by a number of state attorneys general and a judge issuing a temporary stay, essentially. The deal can't close. There will be a hearing on August 3rd to decide the way forward. Got the nod from the EU. Here in the U.S., still an open question.
Paging Ram Banta out in California, along with several other attorneys general who put the brakes on this deal. We'll have much more on it as we move forward. This is Balance of Power, only on Bloomberg.
It's 1:40 on Wall Street. We do check markets all day long here at Bloomberg. We begin with a developing story. European Union says yes, Paramount's $110 billion Warner Brothers Discovery deal does get EU conditional nod. That headline right now on the Bloomberg Professional Service. We do have shares of Paramount Skydance. They're rallying now by 2%. Warner Brothers Discovery up by just about 0.1%. This development comes after earlier in the week on Monday, a federal judge temporarily paused Paramount Skydance's takeover of Warner Brothers Discovery, saying it likely violates antitrust law. However, moments ago, Paramount's $110 billion Warner deal did get a conditional nod from the European Union. Stocks continue to hold on to gains, little change. Perhaps the key takeaway at this hour, ahead of earnings after the bell coming up from both Tesla and Alphabet. Both companies to be closely watched for any indications about their capital expenditure plans. Alphabet shares right now up by 0.3%. Tesla in the red, down by 0.6%. S&P up 0.1%. We do have the Dow higher by 0.2. NASDAQ down 0.1%. And the SOX, the Philadelphia Stock Exchange Semiconductor Index, higher now by 1.2%. Your 10-year at 4.65%, the 2-year 4.29%, and the 30-year now at 5.14%. Gold 41.38 the ounce, up 1.5%. West Texas Intermediate crude up by 3%, 86.88 a barrel. Barrel of Brent crude was above 95, now at 94.14, still higher by 3.5%. For the first time in 10 years, the United Nations is set for a leadership change. Join us tomorrow at 5 o'clock Wall Street time for special coverage of a UN town hall to hear candidates for the next UN Secretary General debate. We'll have it for you live from UN headquarters. Recapping, S&P up now by 0.1%. I'm Charlie Pellett. Joe and Kailey, that is a Bloomberg Business Flash.
Okay, Charlie, looking forward to that tomorrow at 5 p.m. Eastern as Bloomberg holds forth from UNGA. I'm Joe Mathieu in Washington alongside Kailey Leinz. We have news on Clarity. That might sound strange, but that is the name of the crypto bill that we have seen debate up and down for months, should I say years, Kailey? And we actually have the text. We're about to wonk out with none other than Patrick McHenry, because John Thune says he's planning a vote for next week. The updated bill text, this is the important part, and this is what has been shaken loose here, would prevent federal officials and their spouses from issuing digital assets. This is the ethics language Democrats have been asking for with their eyes on the Trump family. Will it be enough? Patrick McHenry, the former Republican congressman, used to chair the House Financial Services Committee, which would be managing this. He also held the gavel for some time, as you remember, Speaker Pro Tem. He's all ours now, and it's great to see you, Mr. Chairman. Welcome back. I don't know if you've had a chance to crank through the text. I know that you're a supporter of this bill and the need for a framework. Will this pass?
Eventually, yes. It's a question of timing. It's sort of when, not if. Though the debate right now on Capitol Hill is a lot of if. The Democratic Party, particularly the pro-crypto Democratic senators that are part of the coalition working on the bill, have raised real concern about so-called ethics language. And that pertains directly to the president and his family's financial holdings of crypto assets. What they fail to realize, and the debate right now on Capitol Hill fails to realize, is that we don't have any federal law dictating what is a digital asset, what is a means of exchange, and the legal parameters around those things. So there is currently no law on this. The best ethics language we have is actually passing the Clarity Act, so you have a clear definition, clear rules of the road, and consumer protections that come from that, as well as the ability to deploy capital here and have innovation. So the big thing here is to get the bill done. It's a question of whether or not the current politics will permit that to happen, or we have to wait longer for the Senate to come to terms with this.
Your point is well taken, Mr. Chairman, that you actually need the market structure portion of this to be able to define what it is that you want to restrict the president and his family from doing. But on the ethics provision, because it is obviously part of this 616-page bill, I think it would stop any elected official, president included, and their spouses from issuing a digital asset. It says nothing of other members of the family, like, say, children of a president. It would be enforced as well by the Attorney General, by the Department of Justice, and the whole thing sunsets on Inauguration Day in 2029. Does that really have teeth in your mind?
Well, it does, because ethics rules are still ethics rules. When you outsource this to another, who do we outsource our federal government to? Elections and the people. But in order to hold federal officials accountable, you have to have rules within that regime. What Democratic senators want to do is hand this over to Democratic state attorney generals, to states attorneys general, to sue the president and enforce this law. That is a recipe for disaster. And I think their own party should recognize what Republican states attorneys general would have done to a President Biden under those circumstances. This is a recipe for complete chaos. The question now is whether or not you can have enforceable ethics language and what would be sufficient to get pro-crypto senators on board. Right now, Senator Alsop-Brooks has said that under no circumstances is this enough, but we have to recognize that the president coming to even this language is a major concession for not just the president, the White House, and the executive branch generally.
Well, this is the part of the interview where you feel happy to not be in Congress anymore, Patrick McHenry. What's about to happen at 3:30? We're going to vote on the NDAA. Democrats don't want any part of it. A budget resolution for reconciliation that many folks, we talked to Chip Roy earlier this hour, even Republicans are concerned that it's not paid for in some cases. We've got a stock trading ban. Is all this going to pass?
Lions and tigers and bears, oh my. This is a real mashup before the House leaves for August recess. Look, I've wanted to say this for a while. Newt Gingrich always said the House is like riding a bicycle. The only way is to actually move forward. I would say it a little differently. In this environment, you have the Senate. In the nature of the Senate, you have old bulls sitting, chewing grass, and content to sit in the sunshine. That's what the Senate does on a sort of a daily basis. In the House is a lot like a border collie or a Labrador or some young pup. If they're fully exercised, they're fine to have inside your house. If they're not fully exercised, they can be quite destructive. And that's what's happened with the House Republican Conference right now. For the Speaker and the leadership, this is where coups and palace intrigue persist when there's no action in the House. And so they had to put together an aggressive agenda in order to get aggressively out of town to save the House Republican Conference. That's really what we're doing right now, is just running as fast. The House Republican leadership is running as fast as possible so they can get out the door and save themselves until we come back for September for more chaos with House Republicans.
Jeez.
And again, I say this as a friend of House Republicans, having spent my adult life working in and around it and loving these folks. But it is what it is.
And I raised a Labrador from puppyhood, and this analogy is really, it's working for me, Mr. Chairman. I understand what it is.
A lot of exercise. Well, the other way to say it.
That you're saying, yes, that is, it's very true.
House Republicans are also like Marines. in that if there's a mission and it's something critical, they're eye on the prize. But if they're on leave and it's a Saturday night, things can get rough.
Whoa.
Wow,
you got to email McHenry on that one.
Yeah, we'll have to take that conversation offline.
Not the dogs.
Okay, well, what about on the idea of something mission critical? I think a lot of people would argue that funding the government falls into that category. The speaker decided that he would just try to make sure we don't shut down in September by punting until after the midterms, until early December. It's unclear what's going to happen in the Senate. The Senate Majority Leader is suggesting that if Democrats don't negotiate on a CR, he's just going to attach it to budget reconciliation. Mr. Chairman, is that effectively killing the filibuster?
That's one mechanism to kill part of the filibuster, which has been eroded over the years. But it's also more of a forcing mechanism to get Chuck Schumer to the table. Look, we went through the longest government shutdown in American history, and it was because Chuck Schumer and Senate Democrats wouldn't give the necessary votes to pass a continuing resolution. And so I think that's where we're headed September 30th this year, unless Leader Thune can entice Leader Schumer to pass a continuing resolution. That's really what the messaging is about. And this will come to the fore as September goes on, but not until then.
So is this how we do it now? And I guess every other year, if there's an election coming in November, you guys better get a CR before August recess because this whole government's going to shut down. We simply can't function otherwise.
That's basically where we are. The budget resolution, the 1974 budget resolution, which was House and Senate Democrats' response to Nixon's impoundment, that's why we have this budget process, has been broken. It's been broken for 30 years. Congress has not passed all 12 appropriations bills by September 30th since the 1990s. So we have a broken legislative process that is further broken because we don't have great muscle memory for policymakers on how to do this basic piece of governance. And so that means that we're in for more chaos, not less, more needless, senseless political violence, not less.
Well, it's a sorry state of affairs, to be sure, Mr. Chairman. When we consider the notion of regular order being something difficult to come by these days, hence why we're talking about a third budget reconciliation package now, I wonder how realistic you think the prospect is for a fourth, because that's what your former colleague, Congressman Chip Roy, was talking to us about. He hopes he'll get his pay-fors. He's just going to wait to see those pay-fors until, in his mind, budget reconciliation 4.0. Is there a real chance of that?
Well, again, this is about the House staying in motion. And as long as you stay in motion, you can stave off palace intrigue and coups. And that is what this reconciliation 4.0, or whatever we're going to call it. But also, when you hear policymakers talk about a fourth iteration when they can't get the third iteration done, it makes me question what medicines they're on and whether or not these psychedelics are in fact now close to FDA approval, whether or not they're already in pre-drug trial here. It's absurd to talk about this, especially in an election year, this late in an election year. It's one of the more bizarre things I've heard out of a really bizarre political year we've had in Washington.
Wow. This is the best Patrick
So I'm saying there is
ever.
no chance of a reconciliation 4.0. Not even the slim.
Understood.
All right, putting the psychedelics down. I thought of you did you see this Gallup poll this morning? We can talk about the vote all day long, but we're getting right down to it here. Americans are the most likely to name politics as a threat to their safety, Mr. Chairman. The latest polling by Gallup identifies 1 in 10 Americans saying politics is the greatest source of risk to their personal safety. More than half of American adults believe the government does not care about them, a record high. Aren't we seeing a reflection of this?
We're seeing a reflection
in our House of Representatives?
We are. Yet these American people that have this feeling vote in these people. This tells me that populism is not some sort of President Trump phenomenon, that populism is going to continue to rise in American politics because of that very explanation you just gave. When you look at the elected officials and say they don't care about me and they're a source of my problem, not a part of my solution, you're going to see unrest. That'll be vividly displayed in not just the primaries that we have continuing throughout this election year, but in the midterms, and then going into the nomination process for both parties, the presidential nomination process will start next year.
Can't wait for that. Just to end the interview on a more optimistic note, perhaps, for yourself, Mr. Chairman. If market structure finally happens, if clarity can get through, ethics provisions included, what else does the crypto industry need in terms of legislation? They fought for the stablecoin legislation. They've long fought for market structure. What's next?
Tax provisions. We have to have clarity on our tax law on what these digital assets are. And what the holding periods are. We had to define these things for commodities and for securities, and likewise we'll have to do that for digital assets. In the nature of a stablecoin, for instance, it should be treated in a similar fashion you have for your bank deposits and interest derived from bank deposits as a tax measure. And so then we have to define what's the holding period for these digital assets and what a capital gain structure would look like. So there's a lot of work to do on that front. And then the regulatory process will be ongoing as a result of the Clarity Act as well for the next year or two.
All right, the former chair of the House Financial Services Committee and now, of course, Bloomberg Politics contributor, Patrick McHenry. Thanks for joining us on this early edition of Balance of Power. And we'll be back for more in the late edition at 5 p.m. right here on Bloomberg TV and radio.